Dead men tell no tales, but their ships speak volumes. Welcome to the Cursed Compass, where we explore the darkest maritime mysteries. On the southern tip of New Zealand lies Waipapa Point. Today, it's a quiet, windswept stretch of coastline, watched over by a solitary lighthouse. But in May of 1881, locals knew this exact beach as the Haunted Coast. Over several weeks, the tide deposited the remains of 74 people along the sand, leaving the shoreline littered with debris and the dead. The aftermath left a legacy of unsettling stories. In Melbourne, over 1,500 miles away, a dying young woman reportedly sat up in bed and pointed at the empty wall, claiming she could see one of the victims, Reverend Waterhouse, beckoning to her from a phantom shore. The true horror of this tragedy is grounded in its location. The vessel did not vanish into the deep ocean. It met its end 13 kilometers from the beach, grounded in plain sight of the mainland. The source of the wreckage was the SS Tararua, a passenger steamer carrying 151 men, women, and children. Tragically, of those on board, 131 died. They spent 20 hours trapped between the reef and the coast, slowly succumbing to the elements while staring directly at the safety of the shore. The journey began routinely. The Tararua steamed out of Port Chalmers on April 29th, bound for Australia. In her hold sat a valuable cargo of 4,000 pounds in silver coins. As night fell, conditions became deceptive. While the sky overhead remained clear, a heavy haze clung to the land, masking the coastline and the lights that marked the shore. At 4 a.m., Captain Garrard attempted to estimate his position, using only the ship's speed and his compass. Believing he had cleared the southernmost point of the South Island, he turned the ship west. He was still miles short of the mark. 20 minutes later, the crew heard the roar of breakers. They desperately tried to steer back out to sea, but at 5 a.m., the Tararua struck the Otara Reef. The impact sheared away the rudder and snapped the propeller, leaving the steamer fast to the reef. The hull remained intact for the moment, but the ship was now a stationary target for the rising tide. Sunrise revealed just how close they were to land. Passengers crowded the tilting deck, watching the shore become visible through the spray, confident that a rescue would begin immediately. One passenger managed to swim through the surf to reach the beach. He alerted a local farmhand who rode to the town of Wyndham to telegraph the news of the disaster. But the system failed the survivors. The telegram sent to Dunedin was routed as a standard message rather than an emergency. Without an urgent tag, hours passed before a rescue ship was even ordered to leave port. On the reef, the situation turned chaotic. The crew attempted to launch lifeboats, but the rising surf repeatedly smashed the heavy wooden boats against the Tararua's iron hull before they could be manned. Several strong swimmers attempted to reach the beach using pieces of wreckage. Most were pulled out to sea by the undercurrent, or perished from the cold just meters from the locals who had gathered on the sand. Survivors could clearly see the figures on the beach watching them, but the freezing surf had turned the short distance into an impassable barrier. At nightfall, the wind and waves intensified. As the ship began to physically break apart, the remaining passengers were forced to abandon the deck and climb into the freezing rigging. The people on shore, sitting by campfires in the dark, could only listen. Around 10 p.m., a voice from the darkness over the reef screamed, "A boat! For God's sake, a boat!" The end came at 2:30 a.m. A massive crash echoed across the water as the masts finally snapped, followed by a final collective cry from the survivors, and then a sudden silence. The wreck became a war of attrition. Over 20 hours, the combination of exhaustion and the Southern Ocean's temperature systematically wore down the survivors until they could no longer hold on to the wreckage. By morning, only the 20 survivors who had reached the shore earlier remained. Out of 151 people on board, 131 had been lost. While families waited for news of the dead, treasure hunters arrived. Divers braved the treacherous reef, not to recover bodies, but to search for the 4,000 pounds in silver lost in the hold. Captain Garrard's body was found miles away, uninjured, with his arms locked in a swimming pose. He had fought the ocean until his heart or his strength simply failed him. An inquiry found a lack of lifebelts, and the captain's navigational errors had doomed the ship. Within 3 years, the Waipapaw Point Lighthouse was built on the point to ensure no other vessel would repeat the error. The SS Tararua remains New Zealand's worst civilian shipping disaster, a permanent reminder of a ship that crossed an ocean only to be lost a few hundred yards from the safety of the shore.